Hi. Hi, everyone. Just a quick reminder, when you use the mics, do speak into the top of the mic to make sure that the online audience can hear us. Now, the EU and the rapid developments in generative AI, we have heard quite a lot about this so far. In fact, Wednesday's first panel, the scene-setting one with Britta, touched on some of the things that we will probably repeat here and discuss here. And now, the EU, if you think about it, it's much more than a lawmaker. It's more than just a bunch of institutions. It's the people, the research community, the private initiative, and a big and diverse language resource, or we want to call it a melting pot. We'll come to that. AI, in particular, the rapid development and uptake of generative AI has had an effect on quite literally everyone. Private individuals, businesses, institutions, public service providers, lawmakers. And that's why we have with us today representatives from 4 different sectors, if you will, of the EU. Andrzej Bojar from the Charles University in Prague for the academia, Helen Dobbie, my colleague, from the Directorate General for Translation at the European Commission, representing the world of institutional translation, should we call it. Andres Vasilyevs, CEO of Tilde, a multinational language service and language technology provider, and Eleanor Val, Legal and Policy Officer at DG Connect, European Commission, representing the regulator. Welcome to all of you. I'd probably first like to hear from you, Andres, as a business CEO. Language technology companies have been at the forefront of using the most advanced technologies for specific applications, for translation, for localization, and more. How are you, your company, how is it adopting and adapting to generative AI? Would you be happy to give us some specific examples?
Yeah, generative AI is taking the world by storm. It's just 2 years still introduction of ChatGPT, but we do see so many possibilities, opportunities, what these large language models can do. And actually, we equal AI with LLMs, but actually AI is much larger field. And in language technologies, we are working with AI for decades, actually. But LLMs are much more powerful, because previous smaller models were quite good for translation job, like neural machine translation was based on the same transformer architecture as GPT model, for example. But the scale of these models and the vast amount of data what is used in training these models make them immensely powerful. And the industry was also facing disruption as everywhere. And the previous ways how you did language processing through rule-based approach, went to statistical approach, it's rapidly being replaced by the power of LLMs, large language models. And particularly they are so powerful or useful because they can combine different functionality. It's not just, it used to be specific tools for translation, for summarization, for terminology extraction. Now you have one model what could be adapted or used in different kind of applications. And this is what companies like we are intensively doing, assessing how to complement and how to replace old technologies with new technologies like LLMs, or to complement with LLMs where it's complementary. For example, where, in applications where you need reliable results, sometimes with like specific tools are more reliable, more useful. But in other cases where there's a human in the loop or human-assisted solutions, then LLMs can be quite useful. And so we implement LLMs in different kind of solutions for machine translation, for speech recognition, for speech generation, text-to-speech, for summarization. And that's very interesting and powerful in combining with applications. Like, for example, with LLMs enabled us to develop a solution, what we call event assistant, what helps to enable multilingual events where people are speaking different languages, but they do not comprehend all these languages, but they can understand each other. They can get meeting notes. They can get summary of the meeting. They can decisions from the meeting can be extracted. And
Does anyone even have to be at the meeting?
Sitting at home, yeah, from your couch.
Just let them do the talking and the
Yeah.
machines transcribe
maybe in
and translate.
Future you can replace yourself with your avatar. Yeah, that would be the next wave. Avatars talking with each other. Yeah, but currently, yeah, and yeah, this is enabled by these tools. But these tools like LLMs, AI, it's helping people. It's not going to replace them completely, of course.
When you said when you replace old technologies, and I reckon you were referring to stuff like neural machine translation. So that's so old hat already. The development is fast-paced. How do you cope? I mean, you have workflows put in place that use state-of-the-art technology, and then technology changes like that, almost overnight. How do you adapt?
Yeah, actually, it's challenging, I should say. And you know, we face it. Yeah, we are doing innovation every day, but still, for people, for our researchers or engineers who have invested years in developing neural MT engines, we are very proud of what we have done, and it's not an easy to switch to completely new technology. And what is helpful? We like assign new teams like to challenge. We say, okay, let's challenge our like old approach, neural MT, with a new wave of large language models, and create kind of a healthy competition that also helps in embracing change. And currently, for smaller languages, and we focus very much on under-resourced languages, LLMs are not yet ready to fully replace neural MT.
I know Andre is smiling when he's listening to you.
Yeah. It's from latest WMT evaluations, but in practical applications, still neural MT engines in many cases and for specific language combinations can produce better, more reliable results, but LLMs are rapidly challenging them. And what we believe that we are going to replace old approach very soon. And so this like kind of internal competition helps people to move faster and to embrace the change.
An HR issue in some respects because people are we tend to be opposed to change. Thank you, Andres. Things are quite similar, or are they different? Similar and different at DGT, which employs about 1,500 translators and about 500 other staff. Helen, how is it's on?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
How is our employer, DGT, harnessing the potential of AI and generative AI, and what role do translators play in this?
Sorry, what was the question?
In what way is DGT harnessing the potential of AI and generative AI?
So we're building on a long tradition in DGT of machine translation, and probably a lot of you know e-translation, which we launched in 2017, which is very widely used. This is a neural machine translation system. But with the advent of LLMs, we have diversified, and we've started to build within our team in DGT. So I'm from the AI services team in DG Translation. And we've started to build AI-powered services like e-briefing, which is a tool that uses a large language model, but in a very secure environment to help staff in the Commission across the institutions, but also across the EU in small and medium-sized businesses to generate briefings. We just launched another version for generating replies to correspondence. Yeah.
The work that was done by translators, has it been helpful in creating our machine translation engines, e-translation? Has our work informed e-translation? Has it? Okay, I meant to say we have, as translators, produced a relatively large volume of data that went into producing our machine translation engines, and that was basically the question: how
I think, did you mean in terms of the LLM project, or were you talking about?
Well, right now I was trying to get to the LLM project because we
Of
are
course,
working on an LLM project again.
Okay, right.
And is the data that we have provided as translators, the huge repository of data, has this been helpful in creating the LLM?
Well, the huge database of previous translations dating back decades is obviously hugely valuable, and everything's built on top of that, yes.
Is there other data that we use or intend to use to create the LLM?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Andrzej, you have worked on machine translation for close to 20 years. You've seen the journey from statistical to rule-based, neural, generative AI-powered. In your case, generative AI plays a very specific role, that of MT enhancer, if you will. MT has gone neural, unsupervised, LLM-based in the blink of an eye. It's really been quite fast. Are we kind of close to the holy grail, the human parity? Because
excellent question, thank you. So at first I would like to comment on the introduction. I totally agree. So I'm a dinosaur here, and like working on machine translation for 20 years. I've seen these paradigm shifts, and it was very important for me to observe them and to kind of, as a phoenix, get up to life again. And I don't know if that happened to more of you, that your field has changed so many times at the technical level. So I was starting with symbolic methods. I had to learn, of course, I did some math, some matrix multiplication because I'm a computer scientist, but I didn't use it from my high school or the first 2 years at the university. And I had to learn that. And then another change came. So I think the main lesson that I learned through this was that I need to be ready to embrace new techniques. And I would like this to be the main message that everybody gets here. So you should remain optimistic about what comes. So I'm actually expecting another wave in a very short time. And about the holy grail question, whether translation is solved, I've been working on a particle language pair for those 20 years, English to Czech translation. Czech is an over-engineered language, as I say it. You know it. We have all these 7 cases, 4 genders, and so on. It was very challenging, and then with neural MT, suddenly it was solved, right? So already the second wave of these waves that rolled over me has solved the challenges of my language. And now the LLMs seem to solve the common sense challenge. So when you're translating, you kind of understand the world. The LLMs seem to know the world.
They give off the impression that
they have the impression, yes. So the translation quality for English to Czech has matched human translation quality on the news text without LLMs in 2018. We managed that with our system. And I didn't stop working on machine translation back then, right? And now I think the LLMs are, of course, pushing this to other languages. What is the important lesson that I have learned throughout the years is the lesson of the WMT evaluations, the shared tasks. And in those tasks, we have seen, not so much in WMT, but in other fellow shared tasks, that data leakage is a serious problem in evaluation. So as soon as your test set is already covered to some extent with your training data, then suddenly the technology seems to be amazing, right? And I fear that the current evaluation and assessment of LLMs that we are doing is biased, heavily affected by the is data leakage.
Between the test set and the...
Between the test set and the training data. The training data is the whole internet, everything that was written by all your fellows. And there is an English saying, great minds think alike, right? So I guess everybody here has a great mind. You think you are unique, you ask a very unique, difficult question to the LLM, but have you checked before how many times this question was already answered in the internet? So what I'm saying is that novelty that we are trying to test with the models is very difficult to test for us as every individual. It's very difficult to be creative and truly novel. So you're just testing whether the model has seen something like that. So the translation is solved for things that were written before, for ideas that were expressed before. There, the system very easily, especially if it was written by more people in different ways, the model very easily merges the formulations about the old content. But the new content and the new ideas still will be a challenge and risky. Yeah.
So it's meeting its limitations by virtue of the structure, by virtue of where it's... gets the data. Is there going to be a slump in the hype? Have LLMs been hyped up too much?
I absolutely think they have been hyped up too much. Yeah, and the AI as a whole field has seen some of its winters, for example, in the 60s, and I'm really worried of another AI winter. I hope it's not coming, and if we adapt and embrace it as the whole society, like if we do not rely on them too much, and that's the finance people who should respond to that question, if the investments didn't go too high, right? So
AI winter. Oh. It's actually, would be translated as summer.
No, I would not say that.
It was so out there, I had to say. Thank you, Andrei. With a multitude of possibilities and what seems like nearly unlimited potential, and power, it is not unimaginable that generative AI could elude control. The questions of privacy, plagiarism, copyright, bias, be they related to the design of AI models or to their use, are quite relevant, more than ever so. So the EU decided, the first one in the world to do so, to try and comprehensively regulate the development and use of AI and generative AI by adopting the AI Act in June this year. Eleanor, what exactly is, there's a site that summarizes it for you, but no. What exactly is the AI Act and what does it do?
No, thank you very much for this question, and indeed I think it's a great one. So indeed, we are in the EU the first one in the world to have a comprehensive regulation on artificial intelligence. And let me just say that this has been, this is a result of many years of work. So actually the European Union, through the European Commission, published our first EU strategy on AI back in 2018. So we were just saying in this discussion that only in the last couple of years, ChatGPT became popular. We saw the rise of generative AI. But I just wanted to mention that the EU has been working on AI policy for quite a few years already. And during these years, we were confronted with, in thinking on how to regulate AI and generative AI, we were confronted with a set of fundamental choices to make, mostly because indeed we were the first ones to set up such a regulatory framework in the world. And I think I can give you maybe some insights on some of the key choices that we had to make as a sort of overview on what our regulation is, what the EU approach is to AI regulation. So the first fundamental choice that we had to make was in a way the aim. So what do we want to achieve? What is our aim through this regulation? And our aim with the AI Act truly reflects our broader strategy on AI. So we sometimes say in DigiConnect that trustworthy AI walks on two legs. So one leg is regulation and the other leg is innovation. So we really have this dual approach where we want to emphasize both aspects. And this is something that we wanted to reflect through our legal text. So in the AI Act, we want to foster innovation by setting clear messages and clear provisions on what is possible and what is legal to do and what is not possible to do. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we are fully addressing the health, the safety, and the fundamental rights of people when it comes to AI. The second big choice and fundamental choice that we had to make was whether to regulate horizontally or vertically. So whether to have multiple pieces of regulation for AI in different sectors. So for instance, one regulation about AI in finance, one about AI in translation, one about AI in healthcare, and so on and so forth. Or whether we wanted to have one single piece of regulation that would horizontally cover all of the use cases of AI. And after having lots of consultations with experts, with stakeholders, with practitioners, and of course with our experts within the institutions, we decided to opt for the horizontal approach. So the regulation that we now have in the EU is just one piece of regulation that covers all of the different sectoral uses of artificial intelligence. And this, of course, this choice was made to ensure full coherence and consistency across all the different use cases that we can have on AI. The third fundamental choice that we had to make was how to make sure that we could ensure proportionality. So on the one hand, we wanted to appropriately tackle all of the risks and all of the potential problems and challenges that come from AI. But on the other hand, we didn't want to overregulate and we didn't want to hinder innovation and put up some limitations where it was not needed, actually. So the approach that we took to face this challenge was to have a risk-based approach. So in the regulation that we have in the EU AI Act, we have 4 different categories of risk of each potential use of AI systems. This means that we have different types of provisions, different types of requirements for each risk category. So we can make sure that we are requiring more specific provisions and more specific good practices for the most high-risk systems. But on the other hand, we are not hindering innovation. And in particular, in the AI Act, we have 4 categories of risks. I don't want to go into too much detail, but just to give you a rough idea of how the legal text was conceived, we have the first category, which is minimal risk. So from the assessments that the European Commission has done, we estimate that this will cover roughly 80 to 85% of the use cases of AI systems. So the vast majority of AI systems will not have to comply with additional or new regulations or provisions. We then have the transparency risk, which means that we have a set of rules, a set of different rules, all aimed at ensuring that every person is fully aware that they are interacting with content or systems that are AI-powered. So a clear example that I can give about this is chatbots. And I think this is also quite relevant for your profession, for translators. The AI Act states that whenever a person is interacting with an AI-powered chatbot, whether in the form of a written chatbot on a website or a call center that would be AI-powered, the person would need to be informed that they are interacting with an AI-powered system. In a similar vein, whenever we have AI-powered deepfakes on the web, so videos and images that are falsely depicting real people, we will have to, well, these images and these videos will have to be clearly labeled as AI generated. We then have the high-risk category of AI systems. So these cover systems such as critical infrastructure systems, AI used in the context of judicial systems, AI used in the context of education, of recruitment, for instance. And in that case, we have a set of requirements to make sure that these systems are fully in line with the values that we have in the EU. So I would say that the most important one in a way is the fact that before these systems can be placed on the EU market, they will have to undergo a third-party certification process. So before they can be placed on the EU market, we can make sure that they are complying with the rules that we have. And then we have a set of requirements in terms of the data set that has been used to train that system, in terms of the human oversight that needs to be ensured, the cybersecurity, and many other aspects. And then finally, we have the last category, which is unacceptable risks. And in this case, we have a very small set of use cases of AI systems that we in the European Union deem unacceptable. So these use cases will be completely banned from the EU market as of the 2nd of February of next year. Just to give you an example, these systems include, for instance, the use of AI to exploit people's vulnerabilities. So for instance, subliminal techniques that are AI-powered will be completely banned in the EU.
So this final category is the one that actually contains specific use cases, whereas the other three categories are based on the effects of the risk.
Well, in a way, all of the categories that we have are based on specific use cases in the sense of practical application. So in the legal text, what we have is we have annexes of the legal text where we have all of the specific description and explanation on all of the use cases that fall under the transparency risk, and in particular the high risk, and then the unacceptable risk.
Risk was identified as a common ground to
Absolutely.
generative AI,
Yeah.
regardless of where it's used. It's only just how big.
Well, generative AI, I would say that generative AI was our fourth major choice that we had to make. So how to make sure that we were appropriately targeting generative AI, once again, without over-regulating. And the way, the approach that we have taken also with generative AI is to have a specific risk approach, which in the case of generative AI takes a slightly different form compared to what we have in the rest of the legal text. So most of the AI Act, the regulation that we have, addresses AI systems, which is the final product, the final AI application that you can use, or in a commercial setting in particular. AI models, general purpose AI models, which is the element that we cover in the regulation, are the models that are, in a way, the building blocks that are used to then develop general purpose AI systems and what we call, let's say, generative AI. So in the AI Act, we are including specific provisions for these models. And in particular, we are mandating these models to put a policy in place to make sure that they comply with the current copyright law that we have in the EU. I know that copyright is a big theme, especially for this crowd of translators. In the EU, we already have clear rules on what content can be used within the copyright rules that we have in the EU. And in particular, you might be familiar with the 2019 Copyright Directive that we have in the EU. And what we have done with the AI Act, we didn't want to introduce new copyright-related regulation and to cause confusion in a way between what we already have and the new AI Act. So what we did instead of adding new rules for copyright, we created provisions to facilitate the implementation of the rules that we already have in the EU.
I believe Andre had a comment on.
I had a question. So just to make the panel more interactive and to maybe challenge you a little. So there was a question given to Marina Pancheva. I really liked that talk that was saying the most important messages to all of you, like be ready to learn, expect the unexpected tomorrow, and always try to test the new technology, test if it works for you, and so on. And there was a question which was how do we teach students of translation, for example, to like learn with these if even us teachers don't know the technologies. And Marina's suggestion was to team with the students and work with them together. So that means that education is the central point. I think that we are all at the same level of knowledge now. Like I said that I'm a dinosaur in the field of machine translation. I know that what all of you here call AI, that for me is just the decoder of the plain old transform model, right? So I'm like bored by that technology in some sense, it's old, but because of the data, it behaves differently. So we are all at the same level. We are still all trying to like touch and understand the subject. And now the AI Act tells us that education is a high-risk area. So services that would be then used in schools should first go through some validations, I guess, and that will probably block the exploration of that. So I'm really worried here if the innovation, which you, like, of course, see as important and that should not be put down by the regulation too much, is actually blocked if we would be waiting for systems to get to schools only after they are checked for so many things. And I know how difficult it is to control transformer because I've been doing that for years. So here, I would like you to answer that if you are not constraining the education field too much. And I immediately have also suggestions for everybody here. So I've always taken the partisan approach, right? So there is a goal in my head that I want to achieve, so I just try it. I tried with the kids in my class. And it's my responsibility to see what they're looking at. If they are reading very bad outputs, like nasty words from unregulated LLMs, it is my responsibility as the teacher to come to the child and tell them, oh, please don't do that. This is not being done.
Keep in the driver's seat.
And of course, I would tell them immediately, don't put in any private data of your classmate or other things. And I think that this partisan and like bottom-up grassroots approach is the thing that must not be put down, slowed down by the fear of the regulations. So I think that in addition to saying that, yes, we are making sure that you do not cut yourself in your leg, please do experiment with the knife and make it carefully, but without this parallel examination, we are not going to be fast enough compared to others.
No, thank you so much, and I think you raise a very valid point. And indeed, it is very important for us not to hinder innovation and not to over-regulate, as I stated. But with the AI Act, what we have is really a piece of a much broader framework of regulations in the EU. And the approach that we have adopted with the AI Act is very much in line with other pieces of regulation that we have, in particular in the safety, with respect to safety legislation. So, I mean, to give you a very practical example, the way we see it is that it should, in general, not only in AI, but as concerns the safety of citizens in Europe, it should not be up to the individual person to have the burden of verifying whether that particular system or product is safe enough. So in the same way as in the Europe, you can only sell cars that have been certified, and we do not leave it to the individual buyer to verify whether the safety belt of the car that you're buying is safe enough or not, or to experiment with that.
And you're right, you can perfectly kill people with these regulated cars, yes. So that's, it doesn't prevent all problems, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and we see similar, challenges with AI, because indeed, I mean, we have very practical applications of AI in self-driving cars, for instance, but even in the field of education, we do see it as a priority area. So for us, high risk does not mean that we want to discourage people from using AI in these areas at all, but it just means that these are areas where there's, in a way, a particularly high impact. So people and companies that are using AI in this context need to make sure that they are respecting the values that we have in the EU.
And communication is going on. We might come to AI pacts at a later stage. Andres, you are a service provider and an AI developer. Do you feel that your hands are bound by the AI Act in whatever way?
from one side, I think it's commendable that Europe cares about the human values, about fundamental values, and these values should be respected in AI. And AI is such a powerful tool that could be misused. And we have to make sure that it helps humanity and is not used by the evil forces, so say. But our regulation would be very critical. And we saw its implementation of GDPR. Personal data protection, we all understand it's important. But implementation could go to extremes. And when it's very difficult, if it's not very clear how to implement that in practice, what you can do and what you cannot, can you approach your clients, in what way have you can keep your client database, and in terms of AI, what data you can use in training, and where you what measures should be in place to assure that that this data is does not include any copyrighted information or personal data information. You can go there in extremes, what can make it impractical to develop these tools. So I think the approach is very right. The question is what kind of guidelines and implementation practices and also oversight will be put in place so that to help innovation, not to hinder that. At the end, if implemented in the right way, that could be a competitive advantage. So we could say European AI is more trustable, trustworthy, respecting personal data and copyrights and that
is that the goal as well?
Yeah, but for that, yeah, it should be implemented in a balanced and reasonable way.
Thank you. Oh, yes, go ahead.
An idea that I would like to throw in, and it was not approved by some of my colleagues who are Czech lawyers, but I have this idea of AI driving license. We have these cars that are regulated, so the car, well, doesn't start burning unless there is some damage, or they need to be tested every year so that the risk of this fire is lower. But you're not allowed to drive the car without having go through the education. So what about some purely voluntarily AI driving license for all the pupils, and there they would learn to understand that as soon as you copy-paste some material into this window on the web screen, it will get shipped somewhere and someone will learn and make use of the data, unless you know that this model is run at school on the school servers, or something like that, some basic rules how to use it so that you don't cause harm.
Perhaps we'll leave it at that. I used to teach, funnily enough. There's only so much you can give away, and there's a whole lot of knowledge that people have to acquire in a different way that they cannot be taught on the spot by a teacher. So if you think about it, everyone would need a license for everything, almost.
Purely voluntarily thing, yes.
Okay, thank you. We're halfway through, almost, somewhat. LLMs. Tilde, your company, is one of the winners of the Large AI Grant Challenge that was launched by the European Commission together with the Euro HPC High Performance Computing, the joint undertaking. You have received funding and access to supercomputers to build an open LLM for less supported Baltic and Eastern European languages. How are you planning to do that? What do you need to build such a model? Where do you get the data? Just talk us through it.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, yeah, we are thrilled by this opportunity because, yeah, you heard over these days, there are few factors are needed to be competitive in this area, and it's data, and data. From one side, knowledgeable people, experts in the field, and computing power. You need huge computing power to train these models, and I mean huge. And that changed the playing field. For example, our company is not very big, and we were able to successfully compete with Neural MT era. We do have 27 GPUs on our servers to train these models, and that was sufficient for Neural MT. it's by far not sufficient to train large language models and to be competitive in this world.
You need petaflops, right?
Exactly. And this is why we were so thrilled to participate and to win at this competition. It was actually a tough competition to get access to the most powerful supercomputer in Europe and the fifth most powerful globally, Lumi supercomputer in Finland. In the middle of Finland, its center is set in the place of old power mill, so you can generate power and use excessive heat to actually warm up all the region from that supercomputer. So it's extremely powerful. So we do have 27 GPUs at that center, 12,000 GPUs. And we will still need about 3 months on that supercomputer to train LLM that could be on par with models like GPT. And we are not going to compete generally with big players like Meta or OpenAI or Google or others, but we want to address the gaps, underserved areas. And my mother tongue is Latvian, and we do see how powerful are these models for English and other languages, but they are not so good for my languages and for many other European
Because
languages.
the data?
Because of data. English is dominating language. All the data, what could be used, is used to train these big models, but all the data means dominating language-dominated data. So English is about English texts take about 90% of training data. My mother tongue, it's 0.0 something of training data. Still, yeah, it produces some good results from this interlingual effects that were discussed earlier at the keynote today.
Yeah, Marina just talked about this.
But it's by far not as good as other languages. And then also architecture of these models, the basic building blocks from which these models are based, from tokens. They work on word and subword level. And these blocks are adjusted to English because it's dominating language. But our languages, many of European languages are morphologically rich. They are completely different from linguistic structure. And so you need to adjust architecture of these models for these languages. And this is what we are doing. And our bet is to train models for under-resourced languages and also languages for candidate countries, and yeah, to have the model what is better for translation, for summarization, for text generation, for these languages.
You have access to a supercomputer. Do you have people who can use the supercomputer?
We are happy to have very skilled researchers and engineers in this field. It's not easy to use all those GPUs. When you are scaling up from 20 to thousands, you need to have different approaches. It's reskilling work for engineers, but also we need a lot of data. And this is why we cooperate with language institutions, language institutes, libraries, projects, Internet Archive, HPLT project where Andrzej Bojar was involved, was very helpful. So we invite all the other institutions to contribute their data, because the model what we will develop will be fully open.
That's
open
what
to
I want
everybody,
to ask, yes.
open to any use, for commercial use, for research, for education use, and for adaptation to different applications. This will be foundational model, what could be adapted. And for adaptation, you need much less data, specific data. And we believe that soon adaptation of these models, customization, will be as easy as possible for what will not require very extensive skills. So language professionals like you in this room and our online audience will be able to customize these models and get very competitive advantage in this field.
I just wanted to comment on one thing that may be very important for the audience here, and that is why the EU would need its own language model. I think this is like technological independence. That's the goal behind that. And I was in a panel with this same question for the Czech language. Do we need the Czech language model? And in the panel, we came to the conclusion that, well, maybe we will never be able to compete with the OpenAI or Facebook or Meta models, but we do need the people who understand the technology. So just playing around with this, trying to match that, trying to get as much data, trying to process the data, assessing the performance is something which is absolutely vital for the technological independence. And of course there is the advantage, once you create these models, you have full control of them. You can give them to people for free, they can run it on their sites. Furthermore, that was my question to Andres as well, you have full control of the data. You know what is in. And if you know what is in the training data, you can do reliable measurements if the model performs well on unseen data. If your model is somewhere hidden behind the scenes, you can only query it, and maybe it has seen similar data, and you are being fooled by the by the good performance. And furthermore, if you are talking to someone else's model, you're helping those people. If you have your own model, you're helping your own people. So the more you play around with US services, the more you're helping the US technological market. The more you're using e-translation for translation, the more you're helping our people and our models.
How about multilingual translation?
So I've been working on a new project that I was coordinating. A project is called ELITER. Let's not go into
ELITER, for anyone who's interested.
And that was on multilingual translation. There I learned that the biggest problem for multilingual services is actually to evaluate the multilinguality. So we were translating from 6 source languages. That was from 2019. So we ended in 2022, in March 2022. So before ChatGPT was announced, we were translating from 6 to 42 languages in that project, and we of course developed test sets for those languages, but still only after we launched the system and demonstrated it somewhere, we realized that we are mixing Serbian written in Cyrillic and Latin together, so our outputs were switching the scripts. We didn't know. We were mixing 2 Norwegian languages Bokmål and the other one, and that was because on our team there were no people who could just validate it. So a single look of an eye of a skilled person would immediately tell us that the system works or does not work for the technology. With the high multilinguality, you would need evaluators in all that. So that again brings back the idea of the grassroots approach. You need people to speak up for their language. If you care for your language, you can talk to the companies or whoever is developing the model, and they will happily accept any feedback that you will give to them. So, yeah.
So evaluation is one of the problems. You said in one of your presentations, you wrote, LLMs don't make it better, they actually obscure the problem with data.
That's about generalization. So that was the thing I was trying to point out in my first comment. So when we believe that the LLMs understand something, when you believe they understand your prompt, when you believe they respond to the requests like label with asterisks or put in bold, they do not understand anything, absolutely. Right? So they only mimic what has been in the training data, the problem is testing for generalization. It's so difficult to test for generalization because the LLMs are trained on the whole internet. So it's the problem of testing is obscured with the data. The prompting thing, I would just like to make an advertisement for some model developed by a company which is at least halfway European, Unbabel. They have their models specifically trained for translation and also for tasks related to translation. So in the training data of some certain Unbabel models, there is lots of texts where people have asked for paraphrasing, for spotting of errors. So there, I would trust that the prompts actually do something reliable because it was listed in the training data. With ChatGPT and the prompts that were demonstrated here maybe yesterday and this morning, you just don't know. You're like reverse engineering. You're trying to figure out in which words the developers have described the tasks. And if you are lucky and you hit that, then you get a match. If the developers of the models have not thought of that particular task, then you are not able, you will never be able to explain to the model what it should do. So it has to have seen the task in the training data, and you have to match it to locate the task.
That's also one of the points where linguists come in as prompt writers, if you will. It has been suggested by Bruno Herrmann on Wednesday that despite a slump in the interest in language studies, apparently, and in translation, language experts seem to be in greater demand. One thing, they're reportedly better at prompts than IT experts. I would tend to agree, being a linguist. Your unit, Helen, recently published a couple of vacancies for people interested in prompt writing. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, we see that the value, the services that we've developed, such as e-briefing and e-reply, depends behind the scenes on extremely complex prompts with multiple different steps that are very difficult to produce, and we don't have the capacity necessarily to do that and do lots of other work. So, and it's a skilled role. It's an emerging role. So, I guess there's no prerequisites for entering the profession, if it's a profession, but you need curiosity, and if you're, I would say linguists are very well suited to it as well. And that's vital, because just to get the model to perform that kind of last step, to produce, for example, we in e-briefing produce briefings that we've discussed with the Secretariat General in a lot of detail to make sure it's the structure of a briefing that they would want, and that the result that we get from the model every time is consistent. So this is, we're not using, it's not a chatbot, it's not ChatGPT, it's the kind of programming in natural language behind the scenes to get the model to perform how you want it to, so yeah.
You want to say something?
Of course, of course.
I have a thought on prompt. It just occurred to me the other day. Who was it? One of the speakers suggested that you can use. Marco Russo. That you could use variables when prompting, right? You could just have you could use variables. You do remember what he meant. And I thought, hang on, if you can use a set of variables to prompt a response, my head exploded. You could potentially move to an even more complex way of eliciting a response, because if you use variables, you're kind of almost treading into the coding side of things, and I just found myself in an infinite loop where you actually type code as a prompt to generate a response. My brain's melting as I speak.
To this, I have just like an empirical observation. Some people who train models, LLMs themselves, mentioned that you get better behavior of the model if it's also trained on programming code. So if GitHub source is all in there, it helps. And from the technical point, I believe that this would be because of the bracketing structure that is greatly demonstrated, and some internal consistency, the principle behind the transform model is some attention mechanism. So it learns where to look. And if you provide it with text that have some structure, it learns to look where people like to look, right? And then when you feed it with natural text, it will still kind of prefer the looking patterns that it has observed on the programming code, and therefore it is successful.
You actually understand that? Yeah, great. No, it makes sense. 30 minutes. There's so many questions. Let's look at the audience. Hello, audience. I've been my back to you. Go ahead, please. I think that you... No, it's okay, it's fine. Everyone's been muted. We'll ask the technical guys.
Now it works,
thank you.
yes. Thank you. And thank you for the discussion. It was very interesting to also hear, in particular, from Elinor, on the framework, on how you're working. And you mentioned something which is very dear to me, which are fundamental rights. So my question specifically, is on that, and how might the resource demands of AI systems in the context of climate change impact or violate these human rights, and how, and I would say, in which category or risk category is that framed? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. Yet another very relevant point, and I see that this has also been brought up in the Slido. So what we have, the way we in the AI Act, we particularly address resources and in particular the energy consumption with respect to generative AI technologies. So one of the provisions that all general purpose AI models will have to comply with is to be fully transparent on the energy consumption of these models. So this is the way we have, the main way in which we have targeted that aspect as part of the fundamental rights that we are trying to protect with the AI Act. Maybe I can also address another couple of points that were mentioned before. So the AI driving license. We don't have an AI driving license, but we do have a provision on AI literacy in the AI Act. So on Article 4 in our legal text, we are mandating all of the professional users of AI systems to improve AI literacy among their staff. So this is a first step, and the European Commission as such is also doing quite a lot of initiatives on that. So I would invite you, if you're interested in that, to maybe engage with us, because we do have quite a lot going on AI literacy. The other point that was mentioned before was also implementation. And it was indeed mentioned that, and this is, I can confirm that this is some feedback that we have received from multiple stakeholders, the fact that many stakeholders, many companies would like to receive more guidance from us at the European Commission on how to interpret certain parts of the AI Act, or so to have a bit more assistance throughout the first phase, at least, of the implementation. And I wanted to mention that also on this front, we are quite active. So what we have done with the AI Act is we have introduced, in a way, a very innovative approach to implementation, because we have set up a program that is called the AI Pact that lasts for 3 years. So this is a transitional program that covers the transitional period between the entry into force of the law, which was on the 1st of August of this year, and then the full applicability, so which will be in 3 years. So this means that we have 3 years where the law is a law in the EU, but not all of the provisions are fully applicable yet. So in this transitional period, we have this AI Pact, which is an initiative within which we offer online trainings and online seminars about specific aspects of the AI Act. So we cover aspects such as the high-risk AI systems. What are the sectors, for instance? We have like zoom-ins on particular sectors that are targeted by the AI Act. We have sessions on specific provisions about generative AI technologies. And this is, I'm mentioning this in this particular context because the AI Pact is, and the seminars that we are offering and organizing are completely available to everyone. So even if as translators in your professional life, you might be interested in having more details on some aspects of the regulatory approach that we have in the EU. Just to say that this is a resource that we are making available, of course, free of charge for everyone.
Thank you. Let's go to the floor. Oh, so many questions. Belén.
Thank you so much, Mija, and thank you so much. Super interesting panel. My question is also for Elinor. First of all, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing for the AI Act. I feel very proud to be European and put like human rights and safety of humanity before profit. So thank you for that. What I wanted to ask is a follow-up to what you just explained. I understand implementation is very complex for this specific regulation, but when it comes to language technology, what we do, what impacts us directly, how is that going to work in the level of risk assessment? So will, for example, neural machine translation or LLMs be categorized as minimal risk or AI dubbing even? As technology itself, or will it depend on the use case? And if it depends on the use case, how are we going to manage that? Because then you will have to apply like higher level standards for example, using automated translation in court or in medical environments, but it's the same technology. So it's super complicated, but I wonder if you already have some things or insights that you can share. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to you for the very interesting question. So under the AI Act, so something that I didn't explain because I didn't want to cover too many details, but we have the high-risk category is only considered as such if the AI system plays a role that is, let's say, deemed crucial for the task that is that the AI is meant to have. So in this case, we do consider translation as not being, let's say, not covering this core part of the tasks, which means that in most cases, translation and interpretation services that are AI-powered would fall under the minimal risk category, regardless of the sector or the field where you are translating the text. So for instance, whether you are translating through an AI-powered system content that is related to medical devices, to the medical field, or to education or to commercial advertisements, this would still largely fall under the minimal risk category. As translators, you will be, I think, in a way impacted by the rules that we are putting on the market for general purpose AI models, so for LLMs and generative AI technologies, mostly because this will mean that we are adding an additional tool for these companies to respect copyright rules that we have in the EU, and this will have, of course, an indirect effect on your profession and on your work.
Thank you. We'll go to Slido. You can pick Andres or Andre. How do you fight bias? How can we make sure that the results and info that the AI provides to us will not be biased, but instead will be neutral and objective? Now, AI bias is a thing.
Maybe Andres will have a better answer. I'll say you can't.
Sorry, Nicola.
Yeah, having human validation of AI results. AI is a tool, and it provides you a suggestion. It's up to you to rely on it or not. And when you can apply your human knowledge and a broader perspective in deciding what and where to use AI and which results of AI provided by AI to use.
We heard someone say, again, I forget, someone suggested that when translators were, I think it was Marina, when, I might be wrong, that when translators were asked to evaluate, when they were asked to evaluate the output of an LLM, they went about evaluating it as a translation rather than as an output that is related to the prompt or to the input that was there. So in that particular instance, the human evaluation factor was, it wasn't that good. So we need training. So when you suggest fighting bias with evaluation, again, we need people who can do that. Can you be trained on that?
So
on discovering and trying to eliminate bias.
And that's,
go ahead.
That's the role of humans, of experts, of translators,
linguists,
and domain specialists. Yeah, and this is why we humans are indispensable. We are we are needed in assuring that AI is trustworthy. It's not trustworthy by itself. It's trustworthy in combination as a tool for human, and the final human in the loop, or how do you call it? Yeah, human in control on the driving seat is a key.
So I would like to add some more details from the WMT evaluations that run every year. Every year we are also including human translation among the competing systems, and every year we're fiddling up with the manual evaluation methods, because also the way how you ask the question, is it good translation, there are many ways how to do it, that impacts the reliability of this assessment. And this year the results of WMT will be announced just in a week from now. This year finally across most of the language pairs, humans are again on top or within the top category, which means that the evaluation is not bad. There was, across the changes over the years, there was also a few years when humans were not ranked top, and that actually meant that the evaluation is unreliable. So we also know from our studies that you really need experts. So if you ask students of translations or not translators versus experienced professional translators, you will get different levels of discerning of the results. So the students are not able to notice the differences between the systems. You really need expert, experienced people. And to me, this really, especially in this forum, brings a very big word of warning that I would like to say. You are all experts in language. Are you experts in the domains as well? We have had some videos about nuclear physics, and I think that it is very risky if you do not have a direct channel to an expert in the field, if you do not talk to the expert in the field to validate whether the translation is good. So many years ago, I was listening to an interpretation of the field, in the field which I understood. I knew that the interpretation was language-wise good, but content-wise totally flawed. So we need both experts in content and language to get the best results. But how do we get these people?
And the AI, this combination, yeah.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just super quickly wanted to add that I think a big part of this is also to have more transparency on the data sets that are used to train these systems and models, because this is currently something that we don't have, or we have to an extent that is not sufficient. And what we have in the AI Act, we have specific requirements for these models and these systems to make available key information on the data sets that have been used to train that system. So just to say that once again, the EU law that we have is going into that direction as well to diminish biases.
We'll leave it at that. Just because I know you, Alenka, one last question.
Special privileges. It's not a question, it's a comment, if I may, still to do with the bias. My name is Alenka. So I would like to say that I think the way to fight bias, we need to realize that it comes from the society, because the computers, the algorithms just repeat it from the training materials. So I think the right way to combat it is to decide that it's important, push for this realization, teach people to recognize it, and ourselves as well, because it's hard to recognize one's own bias, and then push through feedback for the improvement of the models.
In a nutshell, go analog and go back to school. Thank you, Andres, Eleanor, Helen, and Andre, for this interesting debate. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And off we go.
Thank you. Well, does this work? No, it doesn't work. So over to you. Sorry.
Over to me.
Yes, again. Now it works.
Oh, it
Thank
does.
you, Micha. That's